Today I'm going to show you guys how to make the Athena corset. This pattern is available in my Etsy storefront. We are going to take it step by step. This follows along with the written instructions, so make sure you refer back to that if you ever get stuck. This also has 4 different style options that you can choose from right here. We have style A, which is the one I'm modeling in the video. Style B doesn't have the drape. Style C, you can skip those hip gussets and keep the drape, and then style D right here. And here you can see the same pattern without those hip gussets. So this is style C. Now we're gonna start the video tutorial. I am starting where everything is already cut out. Make sure you refer to your paper pattern pieces. It will say how many pieces to cut, if you need interfacing, if it is the lining, if it is the drape fabric. Make sure you follow those instructions and also mark your notches and your pleats. And once you've done all that, meet me here and we'll start sewing. We're starting off with all of our corset pieces. You can see I have all of mine cut out right here. And the very first thing we're gonna do is we are going to interface our corset. Now I don't have this cut out and I'm just showing you an example of how you're going to iron that onto the back. That's just because my fabric is super thick. I am skipping the interfacing, but for any other fabric that wasn't like this kind of leathery pleather, I would definitely add some interfacing. That's gonna add some structure for your corset. Once all of your pieces have been interfaced, I like to sew everything one side at a time. So I start on one side and I take my center back that's right there and I place it right sides facing to my side back. I connect those, I'm gonna pin them, and then I'm gonna sew this down in place. Make sure you're sewing everything with 1/2 inch seam allowance. That is throughout the entire pattern. Seam allowance is already included. Once that's been sewn, we are going to grab our side front 2. We're gonna flip the piece that we just sewn with our side back, place those right sides facing and connect those, and we are going to sew that down into place. And just like how we did before, we're gonna grab our side front 1. We are gonna place our side front 2 right sides facing, pin that into place, and then sew it down. Now we're gonna finish off one whole side by taking that side front 1 and connecting it to the center front with right sides facing. You can see I have that pinned down into place. And then we're gonna take that and sew down. This should complete one whole side. Once all of that is done and your whole side is done, you're going to repeat those exact same steps in that exact same order. You're gonna start with your center back and work towards the center front. This makes sure your corset is really even and doesn't get off even if 0.1 inch, and you slowly do that throughout every single piece. Eventually when you get to the end, it will be lopsided. So repeat all those steps and it should look like this right here. Once you reach that point, we are going to press all of your seams. Now we are going to press these away from the center front. So each side is going to be going in opposite direction. You can see here I'm using a pressing cloth. That's just because of the fabric that I'm using, but I am pressing all of my seams away from the center front. If you have a tailoring ham or anything for those curves, that also really helps at the bust and the hips. Repeat this for all of your seams, and then we are actually going to sew down that seam allowance in the direction that you've pressed it, which is away from the center front. We're gonna do this for all of the seam allowance for our corset, sewing this down, and this is gonna create the channel for our boning that we're gonna place a little bit later. Once you're done, the inside of your corset should look like this. You can see I have all of my seam allowance sewn down, going the opposite direction from the center front. Now we're gonna get started on our hip pieces. Now this is optional, so if you're not doing hips, feel free to skip the next couple minutes, but we're gonna grab all 8 of our hip pieces that you can see I have laid out right here. We're gonna grab 2 of those hip pieces and we are going to place them right sides facing, and we're gonna pin at the center part that is marked on your pattern so you don't get confused on what is the center and what is the outside, but we're pinning that center part and we're gonna sew those down into place. Once you've done that, again, I'm just taking my pressing cloth because of my fabric, we're gonna press that seam flat. You're going to repeat this for all of your hip pieces, and once you've done that, you should now have 4. We're gonna take 2 of those and place them right sides facing and pin on the outside of those 2. We're gonna sew those down into place together and it should look like this. You'll repeat it for both sides, but you should have your hip gussets. So now those 8 pieces have become 2. This next step is purely aesthetic, so if you want to skip this, feel free to, but it'll just help your lines align really well. But I am going to sew down my seam allowance for that center hip gusset in the same direction for the side that it's going on. So that way, not only are my seams aligning, but also the direction that my seam allowance is sewn down also aligns. Again, this is optional, so don't feel like you have to do this. You can also do that step after you've added to your corset. It might be a little bit easier, but what we're gonna do next is we are just going to align those corsets. Make sure you go really slowly when you do this. Make sure the bottom is matching up, and as well as these seams at the center. This is a curve, so sometimes it can be a little bit difficult, but we're gonna take that hip gusset, place it right sides facing against your corset, and we are going to pin it in place. Again, this is a curve, so take your time. You can see I'm really taking my time, same with when you're sewing, but make sure everything is aligning and that your hip gusset aligns in the middle, all of your seams are aligning, and then also matches up at the end. I'll also flip this so you guys can get a good view of what this is gonna look like, but it should look like this. Right here, you can see my hip gusset is all placed in and pinned, and now I'm gonna take that over to my sewing machine and sew that down into place. Then I'm just gonna repeat this for both hip pieces, and it should look like this. Once that's done, I'm gonna trim off seam allowance. This is gonna help reduce bulk at the waist so it doesn't look bulky where you don't want it to look bulky. Once that's done, we're actually gonna set our main fabric aside, and now we're just gonna repeat everything we just did in our lining fabric. I didn't film this because we're repeating the exact same steps, but we are going to finish off the same thing with our lining fabric. Once you've done your lining, we're gonna grab our main fabric once more, and we're actually gonna place our boning channels. Now, I am only putting boning in the longest one right there. That is our side front 1 and our side front 2 seam. We'll also add boning at the very end to our center back, but if you want yours more boned, feel free to enter them into any of those channels you like. I'm gonna start by measuring my boning channel, and I'm gonna measure 3/4 from the top and 3/4 for the bottom and cut to that length. Once I've done that, I like to tape off my ends. You can also burn them, or if you're using steel or spiral boning, they normally come with caps. And this is just gonna help prevent that from poking through your fabric while you're wearing your corset. Then I'm just gonna slide my boning into the channel that we've cut it for, and I'm gonna repeat this for both sides. Now we're gonna move on to our drape. I realize it's a little hard to see, but I do zoom in here. If you're not adding a drape, feel free to skip this, but we are actually going to sew our pleats, and that is those little dark marks that you can see right here. So I have my front drape piece, and I am taking the bottom of one pleat and folding it up towards the top of the same pleat. There's 3 on each side, so I'm gonna repeat this 2 more times for this side, and then I'll go back and I'll do the other side for all 3. So you have 6 total pleats for your front drape, and we're just gonna fold those upwards and pin them into place. And I'll show you what this looks like once I've done both sides. Once all your pleats are pinned, it should look like this. Now I'm gonna take this over to my sewing machine, and I'm just going to do a base stitch, which I've done right here. I'm just gonna base stitch this, and then I'm going to grab my back drape. This is a little bit smaller, as you can see. We're gonna place this on top of our front drape with right sides facing, and we're going to align just the bottom of the drape, which is that really kind of circular, almost half circular part. We're gonna pin just the bottom, again, right sides facing, and we are going to sew this down into place. Here you can see I have sewn it down, and now I'm just gonna trim off that seam allowance from the bottom. Once I've trimmed my seam allowance, I'm going to flip this right sides out, so then it should be wrong sides facing. Once I've done this, I'm actually going to align the top edges and the sides of my front and back drape. So you'll kind of want to pull up that back drape so it matches the front. Once those are aligned, we're actually going to pin all along the sides and the top of that drape. So anything that's not sewn, we're going to pin those all along the side and all along the top. And then we're gonna add those together with a basting stitch. So you don't have to actually do a full stitch. We're just gonna baste those together before we add it on to our main corset. So here's what it'll look like all pinned into place. I'll base stitch that down. And once I'm done, we're actually going to place this on top of our main corset. So you can see I have my main corset laid out, right sides facing up, and I'm gonna place my drape with also the right sides facing up. And I'm gonna pin this all along the top edge, as well as the sides of the drape. Now the sides of the drape should stop right at about the same point as your side back and your side front to that seam right there. We're gonna pin all the way along, and once I have that pinned, again, I am just going to base stitch this down to my main corset. Here I have that base stitched down right here, and now I'm gonna grab my lining corset, and we're gonna take this and we're gonna place it right sides facing on top of this. Now, if you skipped your drape, this is where you're gonna wanna pick back up because you're going to add your lining the exact same, you just don't have that draped piece. When I'm adding on my lining, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to pin all the way along the top, all the way along the entire top. Then I'm gonna go down all the way along one whole side. The only thing I am not going to pin or sew is I'm gonna leave a little bit of that bottom corner out on both sides, and this is because we're gonna add a little bit of boning on that center back that I'll show you at the very end. But we're gonna leave that open, and then I'm gonna continue on all along the bottom. Once I'm done with the bottom, you see I'm gonna leave a big hole on the other side, and that's so we can flip our corset right sides out. So here I am getting to the other side. Make sure you leave that bottom open just a little bit, and then I'm going to leave open a nice chunk of that side because we're gonna flip our corset right sides out through this hole right here. Everything else that you see pinned is gonna be sewn up and sewn into place. You can see here I've sewn my lining to my main fabric. I have that little hole on the ends and that big hole on one side. Once I've done this, I'm just going to trim off the seam allowance, especially on those corners, and I'll do a little bit of slits on those curves so that everything lies nice and flat. Once you've trimmed off that seam allowance, you're gonna pull this from the inside to flip this right sides out to reveal your corset. And it should look something like this, whether or not you have the hips or the drape, it should be a little bit similar. But once that's done, I'm just going to give this a nice press and make sure everything is nice and flat. Now I'm gonna close up that side hole. Make sure the bottom is still open. So you see I have my other side that's still open. We're gonna put our boning channels there. But first we're gonna close up this side hole. I'm gonna take the seam allowance and fold that in, following along the same amount of seam allowance that I have on the other side. So I'm just gonna pin this into place, and I'm going to sew along. And when I sew this, I like to sew all the way from the top to the bottom, even though the top doesn't need closing, just so I have one cohesive line on that side. Once that's been sewn, you can see I have that closed up right here. We are actually going to go and we are going to create a channel. So this is marked on your pattern. You're just going to sew a straight line from the top to the bottom, 0.5 inches away from your center back. This is going to create a channel for your boning to be placed into. Once you've sewn a channel down, we are going to take our boning and we're going to measure a piece of boning once again. You can measure this from the top, but make sure you go 3/4 of an inch from the bottom. Remember to either tape off or cap your boning pieces so they don't poke through like we did earlier. And then we're just gonna place that boning into the channels that we've just created, and we'll repeat that for both sides of your corset. This is so that your grommets have something to push up against and they're not just pulling. Once you've done that for both sides, we are just going to fold in that bottom corner for both sides. We're gonna pin that into place and then sew that down. You can use that doing the same seam allowance that you have throughout your corset, and we'll just sew up that very bottom part. Once you've done this, we're gonna move on to our final steps. We're just gonna mark where our grommets go, and then either using a grommet press or you can use a grommet kit, we're just going to place all of those grommets and then lace our corset up, and you are finished. I hope you guys enjoy your new top, and I hope this tutorial was helpful. If you have questions, please message me on Etsy. It's a little bit easier to organize any questions or comments. Let me know what you guys think. I hope you enjoy your new corset, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial.